Spofest. That was a serious anomaly. I decided I would read one of the two pieces that I actually have published. It's in an anthology put out by a website. So. Anyway, here it is. It's called Day 25,567. It's just a throwaway phone. You don't even have to turn it on. Just carry it for emergencies. He glared first at his sister, then at the plastic-wrapped demon looking so innocent, so functional. Finally, he tossed it onto the table by his chair. It's the top of a very slippery slope. That's what it is. Next thing you know, you'll want me to have computers and the internet in the house. And would that be such a bad thing? Yes, they distract, eating up your time, lulling you into thinking you're accomplishing something. Excuse me. And all the while, they're keeping you from actually thinking or doing anything. You almost sound like Dad did when Mom wanted to get a phone and a TV. He said it would be the end of family life as we knew it. Said we wouldn't have time for each other because we'd be too busy talking on the phone or watching the Idiot Box. And he wasn't far wrong, was he? Of course he was. Getting a phone and a TV didn't destroy our family life. Oh yeah? Well, just let me ask you one thing. How many family sing-alongs did we have after that? Remember when Dad would play guitar or Mom would play piano and we'd all sing? I'm sorry, I'm having allergy problems. We still did, Dad. When? I remember the neighbors coming over and having a room full of people playing guitars and singing. We still did, Dad. When? I remember the neighbors coming over and having a room full of people playing guitars and singing. That's not the same as a family sing-along, but I remember that too. How many times? I don't know, lots of times. I'll tell you how many times. 3. Only 3? Are you sure? Sure as death and taxes, 3 times. Then everybody went back to staying home and watching TV. Seemed like a lot more than 3 times. It was 3. I remember. She studied him for a few minutes, trying to see him as he had been in their youth. He had been a happy child, funny, intelligent, and a pretty fair singer. His hair had been blonde, not white, skin smooth, not wrinkled, and his eyes had been that clear blue of a spring day, not the blurry, faded blue of decorations on old china. She couldn't quite do it. Every time she started to get an image, it would waver and resolve into this withered, crotchety old man. Yeah, staring sourly out his window at the world, something she had no clue as to what had changed him in the years. Something she had no clue as to what had changed him in the years they had lived separate lives. He was all she had left of her original family, and she felt an obligation to come visit and try to bring some cheer into his, as it appeared to her, bleak existence. As they had today, her efforts usually fell miserably short of the mark. She capitulated. Rising from her chair, she passed behind his, patted his head, and headed for the door. I'll try to get back to see you in a couple of days. Will you be all right? I've been all right for all these years. Don't see why that should change in the next couple of days. He turned back for a moment. Don't you ever get lonely up here all by yourself? No one to talk to? Nope. I like it like this. Always have. You know that. Yes, I do, but knowing it isn't understanding it, and I don't think I ever will. Well, you don't have to. I like it. All you have to do is respect that. Be careful going down the hill. Road's in pretty bad shape, as you probably noticed coming up. Damn county won't do a thing with it just because I'm the only one up here. Oh, for heaven's sakes, they're not doing it just to spite you. You know that with all the rain, they've got their hands full. They'll get to it soon as they can, but I will be careful. See you in a couple of days. I love you. Love you too. He heard her shut the door behind her, and a few moments later start up the car. By the sound, it seemed that she sat and waited for something. Car idling, a minute, maybe 2. Then the engine sound slowly faded as she drove down the hill to the highway going toward town. He leaned back in his chair and sat without further movement, staring at the ceiling while the shadows shifted and dusk gathered in the room. Having finally retraced all the familiar cracks and cobwebs above him, he straightened. turned on the lamp, and picked up a tablet and a number 2 Ticonderoga from the chair side table. He noticed the phone still encased in its transparent cocoon. He opened the drawer and dumped the offensive instrument into it, all the while muttering what may or may not have been obscenities under his breath. Turning to a blank page in the tablet, the last, he noted, the old man began to write, stopping occasionally to tap his pursed lips with the pencil. The soft scratching sound made by the graphite as it traversed the plane of the coarse yellow paper was soothing to his still ruffled feathers. At odd intervals, as something particularly insightful occurred to him, he would allow a faint smile to play across his countenance like a quick splash of sunlight on an otherwise cloudy day. When the page was filled with uniform Spencerian script, he rose, walked across the scuffed wooden floor to a cupboard by the refrigerator. He opened the door, revealing 3 shelves, 2 of which were filled end to end with writing tablets identical to the ones he held in his hand. That one he carefully placed on the 3rd shelf, which was only half full, and closed the door. Something called for his attention through the screen door. He walked over, stepped out onto the porch, and took in the panoramic view afforded by his perch atop the hill. To the west, the sun was just about gone behind the gentle rolling tree-covered foothills of the majestic mountains rearing up behind him. Light from this nearest of stars played havoc with the rain clouds, still stubbornly refusing to vacate the autumn sky. Rays shot through the moisture-laden clumps of vapor, releasing all the riotous colors of the rainbow, and he suspected a couple that were beyond his visual spectrum. Across this technicolor extravaganza cut the archetypical V of a gaggle of honking migrators. Great, he thought to himself, remind me that this damp, miserable fall will soon turn into a cold, miserable winter. Before too long, he'd have to make one of his infrequent trips to town to lay in supplies for the duration. He hated the wasted time, the forced familiarity, and the idiotic questions such expeditions always entailed. His sister asked questions, but she knew better than to press him for answers. The townspeople, on the other hand, seemed to think he owed them an explanation for his self-imposed exile and hermit-like existence. They were entirely incapable of accepting none of your damn business as a suitable reply to their persistent queries. His last trip had nearly ended in a fist fight. His morose ruminations were rudely interrupted by an alien sound coming from inside the cabin, specifically from the drawer in the table beside his chair. Angrily, he threw open the screen door and walked to the table. He slid open the drawer and stared at the diabolical device, direct descendant of that vile thing created by the evil genius Bell to torment poor souls, allowing them no peace, no solitude, no time to think. Through the clear plastic, which he could now see had been carefully slid open, probably so she could activate the damn thing, he could see a number flashing on a tiny TV screen. He didn't recognize it. After all, it had been over 20 years since he'd been forced to maintain constant availability, i.e. have a phone. He didn't know anyone's registration number in the great web of connectivity. Reluctantly, he picked up the still insanely chirping package and returned with it to the porch. There, as he stared intently at it, all the irritation, frustration, stultification, one of these days I'm going to stop writing this thing. Dehumanization, mind-numbing standardization, and humiliation heaped upon him by an uncaring world for all those years came to a head. With all his strength, he cast the satanic talisman from him. At precisely that same moment, the sun completed its daily disappearing act, plunging the world into total darkness.